Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. I couldn't click my got it for recording. We're
Oh,
off to a good start today, but I feel like, that's going to be kind of our topic this week is there is a lot happening. So as always, I'm joined by the lovely Lisa and Ginette. We are some of the mediums and channelers from Avalon Spirit, and it's lovely to have you here. If you've been, obviously, if you're watching this, you're in the world of spirit, of energetics. There's been a lot that's happened, I feel like, in the last week or so. It's been intense out there. And so, one of the big things that a lot of people are talking about is UFO disclosure, extraterrestrial beings that are not from our 3D world and what that looks like. And so, there's been a lot of chatter about that. And I think that was what we were talking about. We were going to do our jumping off point, but also it's kind of this microcosm of a lot of bigger things. There's been a lot of intense energies happening. There's been a lot happening with the sun, the Schumann resonance, timelines, which we've talked
timeline.
about over the last couple of weeks. So, all to say, we're kind of diving into everything that's been going on because it seems like each week of June, it just builds and builds and builds. And we're kind of the three of us will check in with each other and be like, what is going on? Because all of a sudden, this wave of something will come in, or these big pieces of information are coming out. So, all to say, that's what we're going to be talking about this week. Ladies, how has it been for you?
For those of you out there who don't know, can you explain what Schumann resonance is?
Yeah. So basically, Schumann resonance is like the frequency or the earth pulses that come out. So they kind of like echo or respond to the solar flares that come in from the cosmos. And then Mother Earth puts out a beacon of light, essentially, or energy from the earth. So oftentimes we'll have a series of solar flares and then a series of Schumann resonance spikes or blackouts. And it's basically just responding to the energetic nature of the earth, which sounds cool and lovely, but we definitely feel it. Our bodies feel that pulse. So we're not only feeling the ones that come from solar flares, we're also feeling the ones that come from under our feet. So we're really being sandwiched in energy.
Which is happening a ton right now.
A ton. And it's connecting to these timelines that we've been talking about the last 2 weeks. We've been talking about timelines and we're cementing in this merge that's happening. And it's converging at such an unprecedented rate, but it's also causing this like pushback of, it's almost like a merging. I guess we could use this as an example, a merging of 3D or a convergence of 3D and 5D or an overlay of 3D and 5D. And what's happening is there's energies that are trying to push back and prevent the movement forward because humanity is taking very big leaps and bounds right now, very big leaps. And so an example of that is these big disclosures that are happening that happened June 12th about UFOs, UAPs, different whistleblowers in the military and the government coming forward now and speaking and risking their lives to share information. But what that's doing, so that revelation then also brings this energy that is desiring to squash that and either create false narratives around it, false flag things, to push back on it. And so we're seeing a lot in these timeline mergings, push pulls from new energy and old energy. And that's not just limited to even UFOs and stuff. We're seeing that in Hollywood with like old Hollywood templates and new Hollywood templates of consciousness. We're seeing that even energetically. We're seeing a lot of push-pull even in timeline. So it's like we were saying before we started talking, perspective is really key right now, because do you see all of this as movement forward, or do you see this as chaos and turmoil, which you get lost in? Neither one being right or wrong. It's simply what you choose to do when you find yourself in any of those given experiences. So it's very active and lots of momentum coming forward.
There's even push pull in the Schumann resonance, right? So there was recordings of it being at levels that it higher than it's ever been recorded by a significant amount for a number of days, I think earlier in the week, and then followed by a couple days of on and off blacking out. So even what's coming to mind is that how we were talking a few weeks ago back about how it's like the radio is being cranked up. It's, the energies are being cranked right up. And then all of a sudden it's like blacking out and shutting off. And there's these spaces in the Schumann resonance where you're not getting any readings, which is interesting considering, there's always a fairly consistent kind of pulsing vibration from the earth. So it's that push pull of even energies from below, which is so interesting.
And you can even feel that push pull even in your experience of timelines in a single day. And I know we've all had experiences like this where like, your timeline, if I can use that word, is one direction. But then as you're moving in that direction, all these chaotic things seem to fly across your path while you're moving in that direction. Or like you feel out of sync for a moment. Like there are so many things happening from every direction right now that it can be very discombobulating. And very real things too. Like I know, Lisa, you had quite an experience recently too. I had an experience yesterday where I just felt completely out of, like, in the wrong time. There was nothing wrong with my day. There was nothing wrong with it. There was nothing I was worrying about, but I felt like really agitated. And if I would try to do something that would normally just distract me from that, it didn't feel right. And it didn't feel right. And everything I tried didn't feel right. Meditating didn't feel right. Nothing felt right until I finally sat there and was like, what is wrong? What is my problem? And I was like, I don't feel like the energy or the air around me is right. I don't feel I'm in the right time, not place. I was in my room, my kids are home, like that all feels right, but something didn't feel right. And Spirit's like, this is your example of timelines merging. And in this experience right now, you're experiencing the timeline that is not of your highest good, but it's just moving through. Let it move past, keep going forward. And I was like, that is so interesting.
That was yesterday for me.
Yeah.
I almost died in a car accident. And it was insane because it missed me by a second. But in that second, obviously, it was like a bunch of minutes all at once. But the decision I made, it felt like it could have gone either way, depending on the timeline. And it was like weird because I timeline jumped and I remained, and I knew it, same thing. I knew I wasn't in the timeline that I was used to, or the frequency that I was used to. And then a bunch of things went wrong with my brand new vehicle. And so I couldn't drive it, which I knew was my gift of being like, you're not supposed to drive because you are opting out of that timeline. And I could go into that in more detail, but I don't need to. So I just sat at home in my backyard and listened to the wind through the trees. And I said, I literally cancel everything else out for today because I'm not going anywhere and I'm not doing anything else because it's not my highest good. Because I know I'll be maneuvering through my existence in an alternate timeline or energetic frequency in which I'm not aligned with, but it just needs to play out. So I'm going to do my best to create the frequency that I'm in that I can kind of control in a way, and just let it ride out. And that's what I did. And it was definitely trippy for sure. But that's the thing. It's like, you could get into this and it could become so incredibly complex, which it is, right? But then it also can just be very, very simplistic, as was what is. You can simply just go into your body and say, does this feel right or not? And like have that as trusting. So you could go outside and conceptualize as much as you can and make it as complex as you want. And there's times that I like to do that to understand it. But then there's other times when it's like, I just know that this is where I need to be. And I don't need any other reason and rhyme. I knew something was up. I knew there was something going on with the timelines. And that's why I'm like, well, I'm going to sit in my yard and just like ground myself. But then another thing that Spirit is saying is understand too, that the interesting part of the dynamics on Earth right now is the concept of the illusion in which you see around you. Okay, so without making this too complex, some of us are finding it really difficult to connect with some maybe relationships or situations or commitments or something that we previously did, even if it's for a short period of time. and they're explaining this to me as like, you can, in your illusion of your perception of right now, okay, you can have your partner, your spouse right beside you, and you can be interacting with them. But the illusion is that they're on the same timeline as you and the same frequency as you, but they're not. They're in their own. They're in their own alternate complete. And so you're interacting with them based upon yours. But sometimes right now, when things are merging and shifting and changing, it can feel like we are not only in two different frequencies, but two different planets completely, because it just doesn't feel like anything is making sense in which we're used to, right? Because we're moving and we're shaking and we're changing, and we haven't gotten our feet like kind of firm in any kind of frequency or timeline, because there is no solidification in it. So without feeling like there's no hope, just understand that even though there's people within your vision right now, doesn't mean that they are operating in the same frequency or timeline that you are. The illusion in your head feels like they are because you can see them in that. But understand that literally, quite literally, the words that can come out of your mouth can be absorbed and taken in a completely different frequency, way, direction than the way in which you put it out, because of the vibrational change. And it's very, very prevalent right now. So just have patience if things feel so frustrating. And also know that this will, the energies of it will calm down a little bit, but not to alter it. Like, just stay true to yourself. If something doesn't feel right, you don't have to act upon it. Just kind of like ponder in it for a minute and allow yourself to ground in the frequency that feels the most comfortable in that position, in that spot right now.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I've been noticing that a lot too, actually. So I like how you explained it, because I'm like, yes, I know that. And I know that even with my husband, like I can clearly think of conversations where I know we're having two completely different perspectives, and not even just like, we don't agree on this. It's not that, but it's just, we're relating to the thing completely different and on a different wavelength. And our understanding of what it is we're doing is completely different. It's just not aligned. So it's neat.
It's like you're not listening to the same station. You can be sitting there listening to music, but it's just not the same station.
Yeah.
Right. Even though you think it says it is, but it's not, right? Yeah. It's not the same frequency coming through.
Yeah. So I want to tailor that back to the UFO, UAP stuff really quickly, because I think that is what's creating this really interesting divide right now. If we just focus on that topic, we're seeing these divides in all kinds of things, but Dr. Stephen Greer has been pioneering this disclosure movement for a long, long time. And there's tons of stuff on YouTube, the internet, that you can find about him. And you can choose to think what you want. But he has amalgamated tons of different whistleblowers, hundreds and thousands of documents of proof that cannot be denied now, to prove the validity that humanity has been in contact with extraterrestrial, non-human origin beings for a long time, have been working with them, have been communicating with them, learning technology from them, so on and so forth. What I find interesting with this perspective that you're talking about, Lisa, is even with disclosure of this kind or any kind, whenever a truth is being spoken, the timeline in which you're on, or the perspective or the relativity in which you carry, will really determine the way in which you're going to take the information. Yeah. Right? Like, and that right now, that experience we're having, the collective is also having with these big ticket pieces, where we're having to really reflect on, not everyone is going to understand this, and not everyone may understand it at the same level that I understand it. Because to me, personally, I see alien disclosure and I think, well, of course, obviously it's about time. And there's a much higher purpose working in connection with humanity for the highest good. Somebody else can hear that and say, no, that is false. Whereas somebody else can hear that, and in their timeline, they're like, yes, that is true, but I'm afraid of it. This is bad. This means galactic war, right? Like, there's these different timeline perspectives of truth. And the reason why I relate it back to timeline is because this is like solid rooted truths in people that are causing these divides, right? Like solid belief within a given timeline. So when we're having those, if we take it back now to the individual conversations with a spouse, recognizing that their timeline being different from ours comes from a place of being solidly connected into that timeline and feeling that perspective is truth based on the reality known, which can be different from ours. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and it is more than just a change. It's like a difference of opinion. And like we're starting to see it present itself, and I'll watch it even between like people that I know, and I'll be like, whoa, those two things are true. Two things are true. They're just rooted in completely different frequencies and timelines.
Yeah, I have one more example really quick, just because I was watching it this morning. Another example, you know, those like Mandela effects that people talk about. So the Mandela effect it started with the story of Nelson Mandela, where most people know that he did get out of jail and he got to come back to his family and go on living a life. There's another timeline that remembers him dying, and they remember his funeral, and they remember watching his funeral. Just like there's other ones of another one I saw was Britney Spears in this one video. I can't remember which song it is. It's an earlier one. She's got this red jumpsuit on. In the earlier videos, she has
Oops, I did it again.
Yeah, okay, there you go. She has a headpiece. She has like a microphone headpiece, a black one. And they showed all these pictures of people dressing up for Halloween like her with the headpiece. But now you go back in the videos and there is no headpiece. And so it's these like differences of known truth. Same with the Bernstein Bears books. They say the Bernstein Bears versus the Bernstein Bears, I think, written differently in two different timelines. There was a couple other really interesting ones that even when I was listening to the list, the person's like, I don't remember this. It was this. Whereas in my memory, I'm like, no, you're wrong. It was that. But they're like, I'm just presenting this info, but I remember this and not this. And so again, like neither being wrong, they are truths, like you said, Lisa, but timelines are causing such, as they're converging right now too, causing such a muddle for maybe what is real, what is reality, which then
so do you think that this perception, like I'm asking your opinion, do you ladies think that this is all about the new earth frequency and how we are converging into that, and how literally it's not like one earth is going to leave the other earth and we're going to have two solid different earths in which people
that is exactly what I was going to say next. That was exactly what I was going to say next, is I feel like for a long time the conversation kind of in the bigger spiritual world has been, and I don't think we've ever really talked about it this way, but I've used this language, but this idea of like 3D, 5D split. And there was often rhetoric that I would hear from other, like from creators and whatever, talking about like, we're going to split off into two different realities. And there's going to be this event that, or these events that separate and da, 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 da. And I think that created a lot of fear in people because they're like, what does that mean? But that never really resonated with me. I'm like, I don't see that. I don't feel that. And a couple months ago, there was this sense of like, I think it's that we're going to be, and we've talked about this, I think on Spirit Coffee Talk, this idea of like beacons. And I think what it is that we're going to be existing on this 3D planet, but in different experiences, and we might be observing similar collective experiences, but we experience them individually different, dependent on our own timelines, dependent on our own energies, dependent on our own desire to create what we choose, right? Coming back to this conversation of what do you want Spirit asking over and over and over again. So for me, I feel like now this conversation about like them merging, and it's like 5D is coming down to sit on top of 3D with it and be experienced at the same time, to put it in like the most linear, simple way that I think my brain can compute, because again, it can be so minutely complex and infinite. But for my cute little brain, that's how I see it, as like 5D realities, energies, existences, timelines are sitting in and amongst and interweaved with 3D ones, similar to how like the experience that we had in Maui, of like we got there and it was just this like divinely led, flowy, da da da, and then the trip ends and then Lisa and I are in a totally different reality for the last day of the trip, where it was just like, where are we? What just happened? Like, it was this stark contrast of energies, but we were in the same place. Right. So that for me is what is happening and
totally
what's, going on.
Do you remember like a year and a half ago, G, when I had that vision where Spirit explained it to me? Like it was, those books, like those old atlases or something where you can like turn the page over the other one and you can like see underneath it. And it's like
transparencies.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you flip the page over and there's certain things that are actually missing. But it's like, right. And that's how they kind of explained it with the two things are possible at once. And so it's starting to make more sense and more sense and more sense now. But I actually do believe what resonates with me, at least, is that there will be more and more as we're going in the next couple of years. There's going to be two different, not even just two. As we can see now, we're starting to understand the idea that everything is happening simultaneously, right? All at once. And so when I came to more understand that concept too, I was like, okay, this makes sense on how the earth can still work with such a difference in frequency from one person's perception versus another. And it's going to be like, there's going to be a large population of people that live in a different frequency. So the things that they see, experience, live by is going to be vastly different. Even to the point where you're not even going to see a lot of the things physically because it doesn't resonate. It doesn't show up. It's like that part's over top of the page kind of thing. And I know that that's really difficult for some people to understand because it's not something that we're taught, measured. It's like, but as we're learning, that's not really the case. But people are starting to undoubtedly feel what it feels like to experience two different things at once, two different timelines, frequency. That's what this is all about. That's what these conversations are all about.
Yeah.
Not to be scared. And if you are, that's okay. Like, do some research or like feel into what resonates. Because the whole point, I'll get right back. The whole point is not about finding the 5D frequency that is the right one. It's when you say choose, it's about being comfortable in the timeline of the frequency that resonates in that vibration in alignment with you and your vibration. Right? That's the whole point. And so when you can choose, I was listening to this amazing channeler the other day, and he was saying, you can choose every single day. It's not, manifesting isn't about creating the earth that you want to go to. What changes is you, and all of a sudden the things that you don't want anymore aren't showing up anymore because you're no longer in that frequency or that timeline. You have changed. You have evolved. You have put yourself into a higher frequency. Therefore, see the things that align with that frequency and timeline. It's not, I'm going to change my exterior. I am going to bring this into the aspect of that vibration that I want. So choosing is a lot more like, it's about the self more, right? Than it is saying, I'm going to try to make the exterior, the stuff out here, fit more of my frequency. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. And I think that's part of the illusion that we might have misunderstood for so many years. Or that they wanted us to understand or believe in, so that we could go outside of ourselves for validation.
You know what's so interesting? You know what's so interesting in addition to this, a perfect example, perfect, tangible, very 3D example of what you focus on, you then draw to you, is literally TikTok and YouTube algorithms.
100%.
What you choose to look at, you then bring more of that to your thing. So if it's all low vibe drama trauma that you're searching out, it then feeds that back to you. Whereas if you're searching out, I don't know, things about nature and consciousness or whatever, medical
cats.
Yeah, cats. It will feed that back to you. And we have a very, very tangible example of exactly what we can do energetically, but we don't see that.
That actually came up this week for me quite a bit, because when you seek out will continue to show up, just like the algorithm on TikTok. All of a sudden, you're seeing all this stuff that breaks your heart.
Yeah.
You're watching all this like horrific trauma.
Yeah.
And then what
Mhm.
happens? Aki's-
Exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
Elyse and I have the exact same algorithm.
Okay, but are you on Shark Talk right now? Because it's stressful.
Oh,
I needed to like redo my
Oh,
algorithm.
Not on
'cause I
Shark
was
Trevor
like,
had to do
don't
that
go.
too. Yeah, Trevor had to do
Really?
it too.
Shark?
Yeah. He's like, I'm destroyed from ever swimming in the ocean again. I was
Cannot.
like, really? He's like, no, I can't.
Elyse,
Trev and I will be like,
you
guys.
moved out of there when we were in Hawaii, remember?
Yeah, we're back though.
You got back in. Okay, here we go.
I blame TikTok Shark
Oh
Talk
my
because
God.
So what's
For a
your dark
while.
hole? What's your dark hole TikTok, G, that you, when you see it, you're like, oh, I know I need to get back into my higher frequency.
Probably like the unearthing of really dark things. I mean, maybe it's conspiracy, but it's not, well, I don't know what it is, but like when there's like a, did you know this, and this? I love to know things, right? Like I love information. I really do. I love to research. I love to figure stuff out. So when there's like some hidden dark secret thing, I'm curious about it, but I can always feel in the frequency if this is going to benefit me or not. And oftentimes it's like, no, it's like sludgy and I have to not watch it just out of curiosity's sake.
I'm the same way. I'm a sucker for same thing as kind of like true crime and that kind of stuff. And so I'll get into that hole pretty deep, or I'll start like in the TikTok being like the did you know, like the deep government secrets and like stuff that you've been like it like that are intertwined with like big money and that's horrendous. And all of a sudden I'll be talking about it and Chad's like, ew, like what are you talking about? Like I feel so gross when you're saying those words. And then there's a part of me that's like, don't put your head in the sand. You can't deny it. But then there's another part of me that's like, holy shit, that's in a completely different world. Like literally a different dimension that I'm living in.
Yeah.
So I like pull back.
And that's the thing. That's the thing with revelations. Like, I think there's always a balance of like, don't put your head in the sand. Be aware of things, but then also be aware of, do those things pull you down? Do they suck you in? Like, where's your boundary in those things? Because I personally think it's great to be aware and to see what's being revealed. But notice when it hits that boundary layer with you, right? Because I don't know, like there's so much movement going forward, but I saw it this morning. That's why I paused for a minute. I was shown a vision this morning of these converging timelines, right? So 3D and 5D merging, so we get to pick which one we're in. But I saw this image of this dark being, if you will, outline of like a human in a shadow, pushing against it. So you know when like a toddler is trying to push you out of the way of a lineup, what they'll do is they'll usually turn their back and push their back against you to like edge you out of the way, right? So I saw this dark being trying to edge 5D out of the merge. So there's like such a strong pushback right now. And that pushback within revelations can spin people down really dark holes. So there's like a really fine balance right now of being aware, being well-read, if you will, but then knowing where your boundary line is and when it doesn't benefit you, right? When you're actually being sucked into that darker, for lack of a better word, energy. Yeah.
100%.
For me too, it's often who is delivering that information as well. Specifically when we're talking about social media, like I can hear the same pieces of information from two different people, both spiritual, lovely humans. One will take on an energy of fear or, worry or like, doom and gloomy. And then others will take on a similar, it'll be the same information, but a different energy, a different outcome, a different experience with it. So for me, I also try to tailor like, okay, if I want to gather information on this, who am I going to get that information from? Because how they're delivering it and the energy that they're in when they're delivering it really impacts me.
Well, totally. And I think that's why when you say, oh, look, I listen to this person, what they say, and then I'll give it to somebody, right? Or somebody will hear it and they'll be like, did not resonate. It's literally because it doesn't resonate on the same frequency in which you're vibing with, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So two different information based in the frequency will vastly change the way that you interpret the information or whether or not it even comes to you.
Yeah,
Like I feel
that's
like some
huge.
information never makes it to me because it's never hitting my frequency.
Yeah.
My sister and I call it the bubble. And that's exactly what it is. It's like some people really enjoy certain forms of information and I'm like, it's not better or worse. It's just a frequency in which they're hanging out in, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
My bubble is a bubble full of my frequency in which I choose, and it changes, and it does change, and I can be, especially now, like super aware of the change and what's happening around me based on it. I can always know because I look around me and I'm like, oh, this and this and this and this. Obviously, this is the station I'm listening to because it's like ongoing, right? I like to consciously be aware of that and choose. And sometimes I'm like, I'm turning off the whole like thing, dealing with the 3D stuff. And then in that world, try to make the choices to align myself with the best that I can in the little choices. Right? Like right down to the music I'll listen to if I have to clean my house, or, I don't know, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So question for you ladies, with these revelations of late, right? What's your feel throughout the next half of the year? And I'll give some context here. So astrologically speaking, we're in an energy now of movement because we front loaded the beginning of the year. This is all connecting to astrology, right? Like Saturn moving into Pluto, Saturn into Pluto? No, Saturn into Aquarius, something else in Pluto. I can't remember them. Anyways, front loaded it so that we would hit around June and have movement, which I really feel is accurate, and we're moving. Movement means revelations of things. Movement means tower moments of things. Movement means new creations of things, all of it wrapped in. I have seen some people talking about June being very significant in revelations and crumblings, but that it would be nothing compared to what we will see around October, November-ish. What are your feels on that?
I got quite a bit on that, actually.
Yeah.
Elyse, what about you?
I feel like, so I was actually, just before you asked this question, Ginette, I was looking up summer solstice is next week, Wednesday, 21st. And Spirit was reminding me that oftentimes around like putting aside the collective things that we're talking about now, often around kind of big milestone energetic dates, those are usually very significant of some sort of big transformation, but also there is that kind of edging out energy where maybe those call them lower vibe energies are wanting to get it, because we're just also much more open around those dates, right? There's just so much more energy happening. There can be a little bit more kind of nudginess and edging inward. And so thinking about that, they were saying like it's already, as you were saying, Ginette, kind of present right now with everything that's happening. And then next week, summer solstice, that is the longest day of the year, right? We are in the brightest point of the year and feeling through summer. Like there's a lot of light shining, and that's really beautiful. And we're having this beautiful kind of forward momentum. I think for a lot of us, especially on like individual levels, feels like things are kind of opening up, and maybe it doesn't feel all light and sunshiny, but there's this like awareness that's happening, or you're, realizing a new path, or you can see the glimmers of these positive changes. And I feel like that is to come kind of over those summer months. And then as things start to darken, so might the revelations. And can we use this time to really solidify ourselves in our light, in our positive? I struggle with positive, negative energy, but like our higher vibrational energy. Can we use this time to really create our own trajectories before that comes so that it doesn't have to alter your peace. Because as we've been talking about, it's all about how we're choosing to experience it and perceive it. So while we can know, oh, these things might come, maybe big things are coming in, October, November, December, use the light now to ground yourself into what it is that you want, because that doesn't have to change. That's the thing, right? I think in, our fear brain, sometimes we're like, oh, something's coming. And then it feels like it's a threat to our reality, but it doesn't have to be.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. How about you, Lisa? What are you getting for that?
Okay, so how I got it was they showed me that there was like coming in June, basically, end of May, June to August, end of August-ish, August, I guess. It's like they showed me basically the uprooting. So like a tree that was kind of like dead. It's not working anymore, hit by lightning, came down. And it's like, okay, now between June and August, they showed me like this tree, the roots, the whole system coming up. And like that has been the shit show that we've felt, when things are just like, not to say it's bad, but it's literally taking our experiences and like giving it a 180, like giving it everything in front of you to see. Here's all your shit. Here's everything that you can choose to focus on or not focus on, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, timeline jumping, figuring out exactly where you want to reside. Like we're getting all this shit given to us, right? And then what they told me between like kind of mid-end of August to like mid-end of November is where now you take everything that has been exposed by the tower moments, by the like big reveal, and you start to organize exactly how this is implemented in your life. And you can start putting things into tangible use. You kind of start coming in and being like, okay, what are the things that I am now putting forward in my vision, in my timeline? I'm understanding the frequency now. I'm understanding the personal choices. I'm understanding what I'm taking with me and what's just dead, gone. And without sounding like harsh about it, it's like, it's going to involve a lot of like, you're done now. Things are actually going to physically leave, emotionally leave. And it's just like, so it's going to feel like but it's not the same energy as uprooting. It's rerouting with what you're taking from the uprooting. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that rerouting, you kind of put things into tangible motion forward. It's not necessarily easy, but like planting, it's kind of like going through it. You kind of come internalize, you do your motion, you're working with these new frequency, you're working with these new tools. And then in February 2024 is when the kind of fruits of all your labor start to come and actualize, manifest into things that you would have never interpreted a year ago.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And I agree with you couldn't have imagined what it would be, because that's been a consistent thing with Spirit too for me, is that they're like you can feel, and I mean this collectively, like we can feel the momentum, we can feel the movement, we can start to see some of the alignments and the synchronicities, but the end product of this phase, for many, you can't quite even imagine how it comes together until it has, and you look back retrospectively.
Yeah. And you wouldn't have gotten that had you not allowed yourself to get into the frequency to receive it.
Yeah.
Because you can't imagine it when you were sitting in a completely different timeline. Only 12 short months prior. Really.
So, I mean, essentially, I would take these revelations that we're seeing as like amazing indicators for the amount of convergence happening right now.
Yeah.
And shift and change. Like, it's not just crumblings. It's like we've gone through the phases of just solid crumblings, right? This is now the pushing up of the light from within. This is what we've been talking about, and there will be pushback, but these are amazing manifestations of the massive change energy happening in our realities. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah. And I like that, because the whole like understanding with the tree thing for me was like, they said, visualize like the tree in its standing and all of the roots and everything. It's hard because I always like trees I'm so connected to, but let's just pretend that the tree is, or it could be at the tower, right? Of what was firm in the societal beliefs, maybe the patriarch, maybe like the systemic issues that have been for so long, right? essentially what this is the crackling of that. It is the like uprooting. And then so all like I see all these bugs, all these blah blah blah, like after it's come down. And you can either choose to dig in there and like regrow into the root system and like just stay put underneath. You can do that. Or you can take the goods and say, this all work. I'm just gonna plant my own garden. I'm gonna work at all the stuff, and all the people that choose to take the same things and go to their garden that are the same stuff you're gonna naturally align with. It's kind of a silly example, but it's a visual. And that's kind of like what is transpiring between now and kind of next year.
Yeah, I agree.
And some people, honestly, without sounding harsh, it's going to be like, that system's the system I knew. That system's the system I came in to work with. And now that it's gone, I'm out.
Yeah, for sure. So interesting. Well, anything else? Any other points?
No, they're just saying like, just keep your compassionate heart open to understand that we're all experiencing this journey in different ways, right? And that everybody is in some way a part of this upheaval, and how we are perceiving it is based upon our projection of our reality. And so just keep that kind of compassionate heart, because that is also a representation of the frequency in which you're in too. And so sometimes it can feel really dark, but just know that like you can get back to that place where your heart leads and the gratefulness is there, and that everybody is experiencing this in one way, shape, or another, right?
On the heels of that, I just want to say it's interesting you said compassionate heart, because for all of you watching, next Wednesday on the solstice, I'm hosting Cosmic Consciousness, and there is a meditation specific to the compassionate heart, and that is the gateway for moving through this time. And so it's a really
Obviously
neat
why I
cosmic
said that.
consciousness. Yeah, it's such a fun one. I can't wait to do it. And it's there's lots of goddess energy in there, ancient information about solstice, and a divinely led meditation about that. So very timely, very, very timely. So definitely check that out.
Cool.
All right. Elyse,
Well,
I think it's your wrap up.
Yeah. Just, yeah. So thank you as always for joining us. I know we talked about a lot, and I feel like I was sitting and just kind of taking in everything that was said. And I feel like the last like 3-4 weeks of Spirit Coffee Talk have been like big things, like a lot to comprehend, a lot to contemplate, a lot of ways in which we can, like, even as I was listening to you guys, I was just like, yeah, just off in another world. So I think it's just all to say, you might need to rewatch some of these a few times. And I feel like we've had some really big, I know for me, impactful conversations. And so I hope that all of our watchers and listeners get that too. And, feel free to rewatch, because I know I have for a lot of these. And like I said, there's a lot to contemplate. So we hope you enjoy. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can join the Avalon Spirit Facebook group as well. And we will see you next week, summer solstice week.
Bye, everyone.